Welcome to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. I'm Sharon, your resident skeptic who asks all the tough questions. And with me is Jennifer Neal, our manifesting maestro. Whether you're rolling your eyes or raising your vibration, we dive into all things manifestation, mindset, and energy from every side. Hit subscribe, settle in, and get ready for spirited debates, surprising experiments, and laughter on the journey to creating a life you love. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the silence. What happens when nothing is happening? So, Jen, this is going to be a tough one because both you and I have been playing with this a little bit. And as always, we have a little chat before we start our actual podcast just to catch up on each other. So, tell me a little bit about the silence.
Okay, so what do we mean by the silence? What we're talking about is those seasons when everything just stops. You've done all the things, you've visualized, you've journaled, you've asked, you took the aligned actions, maybe, you cleaned up your energy, maybe, and then suddenly nothing happens, right? Crickets. No new clients, no big signs, no baby, no windfall of money to clear up all the debt, like no momentum whatsoever. And your brain starts screaming, what am I missing?
So, basically, every Monday morning.
Exactly. But the truth is that the quiet time may not be, well, it's certainly not a punishment. And it's something you don't want to rush through because this is actually where your next level is forming and coming from.
Okay, so this is interesting. This is the part I don't quite get because when nothing is happening, my logical brain doesn't think this must be the universe working behind the scenes. It thinks you're lazy, you're losing traction, you're falling behind.
Yes, and that's the questioning that most of us are running on because we're human beings, right? That constant productivity, we've been told work hard, you'll get the results. Work hard, you'll get the results. There's got to be some kind of effort to get the results and then that equals progress. But what if silence is part of the energetic process? And what if the rest phase actually has to happen before expansion?
Okay, so there's a phrase I heard once, which I really loved, but I'll be honest, it's tough for me that we're human beings, not human doings. And I'll be
Totally.
honest, I get physically uncomfortable when I'm not doing something. Even on vacation, I'm doing something. And when I was, working or doing other things, I'm checking my email, I'm making sure all the duckies are in the row. And I kind of feel like if I'm not producing something, I'm wasting time.
And that's the exact programming we're talking about. Okay.
Okay.
The do more and the be more and that hustle wiring. And trust me, man, have I leaned into that in the past and, still have a tendency to do that. Most people don't realize, though, that they're manifesting from that state, right? So when you're in hustle, that's an energy of lack because what you're actually saying is, I don't trust this is going to happen unless I've got my hands on the steering wheel. And that proving, that pressure. And let's face it, in some of our biggest asks in life, you've done everything you can. If you could, that baby would be here. If you could, that debt would be gone. It's in the next piece, the space, where we call in the actual energy that we need because we can't do it ourselves.
Okay, so let's get a little practical here. So let's say you've been visualizing and you've taken your micro actions, which we've talked about before. You've done the affirmations, but nothing's happening. So isn't that when you should be doing more?
It depends who you talk to, but like not always. Think of it like planting a seed, and I love this analogy. You don't plant the seed in the beautiful, rich soil and constantly dig the soil up every day to check to see if the plant or the seed is germinating, seeing if it's sprouted. If you did that every day, it would never get a chance to take root, ever. So let the soil do its work. There is a gestational period for every seed you're planting. And in our case, the silence is the soil. So plant the seed, make the ask, and then let it sit.
Okay, so here's the other side of it though. Like in business, for example, if you stop marketing for 2 weeks, things actually do stop happening. Not to mention weekly check-ins with your boss, and you have to say, what did I do this week? And here are some metrics that I'm hitting. And if you sit there and say, I'm just letting the seed germinate, I mean, there's a difference between divine timing and just plain inertia.
1000%. But we're talking about a very key difference here, and that is frequency, right? If your pause is intentional and grounded and open, and in many cases, you don't have a choice because you got nothing left, that is inertia. That's integration. But if your pause is fear based, I don't know if it's going to happen. So I got to work more. I got to work more. I got to work more. Like I'm frozen, nothing's working. That's resistance. And that energy is very different.
Okay, so this is interesting because you're bringing to mind for me something that we were talking about earlier in terms of I've had 10 months of physical working on getting better and physical healing. And it was a physical thing, but it was also a mental thing. And coming to the realization early this week that now I can physically do more things. I'm still building strength, but physically I am quote unquote normal, but I don't feel motivated
Normal.
to do well, normal for me. But I don't feel motivated to do the things that I can now get back to doing. So, that's been very, very frustrating to come to that realization that now my body is ready, but my brain isn't.
Yeah. Well, I think that sometimes because of this constant need to be doing, if you don't feel motivated right now, sometimes it's just that your body doesn't want to do anymore. It doesn't. It wants to sit. And as again, some of the greatest things that come out of life come out of a period of resting or a period of sitting.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, you and I both know, and I've been in that, we talked about this too. Like I've been in that scenario too, where I was between things, I was between careers. I kept going to a friend thinking she had the answer because I wouldn't sit still. I would not sit still. And I kept thinking I was missing something. And there was a lesson in all of this for me. And what I had to realize was best ideas, opportunities, next steps will come out of the silence. They come out of the waiting. And so if your body doesn't feel like being motivated right now, I would lean into that so hard because you know what's going to happen? It will not stick around. And then you'll be right back at it again, like nothing ever, like you didn't miss a beat.
It's interesting because I feel like I've been in fight or flight mode for 10 months, and I've been thinking I've been physically drained, but I haven't realized what a mental drain it was to be in that position. I think if I really thought about that, I'd take a moment to just be and do nothing. And what I'm hearing you say is, silence can either be sacred or self sabotage, depending on the energy behind it.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about, for you skeptics, let's talk about the science behind what's going on in these periods. Okay. Let's
Oh,
bring
that
some
always makes
science
me
in.
happy. Okay, so what's actually happening during the quiet periods?
So, neuroscience calls it the default mode network, whatever. And what that means is when your brain isn't actively forced on a task, it's reorganizing itself and it's making connections between memories, between people, between ideas, between creative insights. And that's why people get their best ideas in the shower or on a walk because you can't hear the ideas coming from the greatest creator in the universe if you're constantly filling up that space with noise.
So I'm going to show my age here as a Gen Xer. When we used to defrag our hard drives on our computers to
That
make
is
more
very
space
geeky.
and to clean it all up in order for the machine to work a lot better. So what I'm hearing you say is silence is literally rewiring our brain for the next idea.
That is a great analogy. That's a great analogy. Your hard drive cannot, it has a capacity, right? We all know when we run out of space for our photos, Apple is happy to tell us they'll give us more storage space, right? Unfortunately, the only way you can buy more storage space in your brain is to let it meditate. Meditation, it's, everyone thinks it's very woo, but it is not. It is creating space for new things to come.
Okay.
So, yes, the same thing happens energetically. When you've declared a new desire, or you want out of a pickle, or you have something you deeply, deeply want, a new frequency, right? It's not on the same frequency you're on. It's up here, maybe. Your body, your nervous system, and your energy field need to recalibrate. You can't jump from survival mode into creation overnight. It doesn't happen like that. It's too far a jump.
Right. So I think we've talked about those little jumps in other things too. So if my body is still in fight or flight mode, even if my mind says I'm ready for the next level, I need the time to that space in between in order to move to the next level. I can't just jump from one to the other, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And for people like you and me, type A's, doers, hustle, 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 that's really hard for us because, we live in fight or flight all the time. Like for almost 10 years straight, I lived in fight or flight. I needed to make the money. I needed to make the money. I had a family to take care of. I needed to make the money. I was doing everything right. I was showing up, I was launching, I was moving forward, but my nervous system hadn't caught up to the frequency that I was calling in, which was abundance. I was
And,
still in that panic state.
and that in itself is exhausting.
Yeah. And yeah, it's exhausting. And so is the silence. It was my body's way of forcing a reset. I wasn't ready for it. I couldn't have made that physical choice, but I needed the reset. It wasn't the universe ignoring me. It was the universe saying, listen, it's time to rest. It's time to integrate. It's time to recalibrate.
So, what do you do with the in between when nothing's happening and you're not even that motivated to do anything about it?
Well, I'm going to give you my answer in a minute, but the smart answer is you don't fight it, you lean into it. And so that's what I now do. And I call it, a conscious reset. I'll go to the beach. I'll let my body drop into stillness. I give myself permission to not have to do or have all the answers. But what I actually now am at the stage of, and I would say, like, if we can get to this stage, now I look at the silence and I go, okay, what have you got cooking, creator? Like what are you working on for me that I just have to sit here and be patient and know the answers are coming, the ideas are coming, the next step is coming. What are you cooking up for me right now? Because I bet you it's way better than I can do it.
As a
Right?
type A person who drives, that waiting sounds terrifying.
It is. But you can drive yourself into nowhere. So good luck with that.
Okay.
Listen,
So,
it used to be like that for me too. But what happens in the silence is that your intuition gets louder and the next inspired action just drops out of nowhere. The one that changes everything, the one that doesn't come when you're scrolling or forcing. It comes when you're quiet enough to receive it. And I'll give you an example. This morning, I'll call it my reflection/spiritual time, every morning, I'm in bed. I happen to be listening to Rick Warren, who's a beautiful pastor out of California. And all of a sudden, this idea drops into my head. You know that I'm in a contest with Gary Vee right now in Stan Store. I'm determined to win the contest. I launched my product 2 weeks ago. I thought it was going to fly off the shelves. The only person that bought it so far is me. I bought my own product to make sure that the system worked. And I didn't even get credited for it because they recognized my email address was the same. Anyway, my point is this morning, I got an idea straight out of the heavens of a product that if I built that out, that's going to win me the contest. And it came so sure, so fast, and so beautifully in the quiet of the morning that I know it's sent straight from the creator.
so what you're telling me then is silence is part of the manifestation cycle. So it's not a void, it's more like a womb where something is growing.
Exactly. The void is creation. It's where everything begins.
Okay, so what about people who mistake that waiting period as a failure?
And that's the trap. Most people quit in the silence. They stop believing right before the shift. And if you can hold the faith through that quiet moment, and listen, it could take 20 months. We just talked about the Matthew McConaughey clip where he talked about not wanting to do rom-com anymore. And he made a firm decision to never accept another rom-com movie. And they got up to 14.5 million in an offer on one of them. And he said no. He had to wait 20 months. He thought
Mhm.
Hollywood had written him off. And then came the dramas he so desperately wanted to do.
So, what you're saying, when there's a time of silence, when it feels endless, suddenly everything will click.
That's where the quantum leap happens. But if you're
Okay.
not good in the silence, you can forget the quantum leap. That's just how it works.
So, are you saying that if you're not good in the silence, that's going to interrupt that leap?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, another good example is this podcast, and we've talked about it 1,000 times. I knew I wanted a podcast. I knew I wanted to do this again. I had asked for it, and I could have forced a topic because I'm not incapable of doing that. But all of a sudden in the waiting, you came along a year ago, September, and it was perfection. So, new ideas, clarity, it all comes out of the silence. And it will never come if you don't surrender.
So, that creative flow moment, that's the payoff of silence.
Yes, it's your higher self. It finally gets a word in every now and again. And when your ego stops panicking, when your ego stops pushing, your higher self can come in and say, hey, why don't you look at this? This is an option.
So, let me ask you this. During the pandemic, a lot of us had a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to think about things and do things a little bit differently. Do you think the pandemic was an opportunity for us to have that forced downtime to rethink how we were living our lives? It wasn't just manifestation, it was space.
Totally, totally, totally. In fact, I said at the time of the pandemic, I think, and again, I believe in God. So I think God, the creator, the universe, whatever you want to call source energy, the one, I think he was so mad at how we were spending our time living to work, not spending time with family, not putting our effort and time into the right things. I think he said, you know what, y'all? I'm going to shut the whole word down and you're going to be forced to rest and forced to spend time with family and forced to do all those things. I remember a friend of mine saying they were so tied up in hockey. They had 3 kids in hockey and not just not like super serious competitive hockey. 3 kids all the time, juggling them back and forth. And I remember her saying, gosh, I wish we could just have a family dinner. But they wouldn't give up the hockey, right? They weren't going to go down a level. And guess what happened? Overnight, they had no hockey to go to. And all of a sudden, they had a family dinner, right? I
Mm-hmm.
agree with you. I think the pandemic was a forced silence or resting period to create a new version of ourselves because we had to stop running.
So I'll say, for me, as a non-God person, I looked at the pandemic when people were in upset and frustration and anger around who said what and which governments were doing X, Y, and Z, as I thought it was a door opening somewhere. However you want that to be perceived, that it was an opportunity that we would take a pause when things were getting crazier and crazier and crazier and have a door open. And look, for some people, myself included, it had one seriously analyzing their relationships and seeing where they were going to go. The way they turned out when one comes out of the other end of it might not have been what one expected, but I could certainly say for myself, it ended up being better. But had the pandemic not happened, I probably wouldn't have been forced into, and I use the term forced lightly, I wouldn't have been pushed to think about where I am today, which for me is in a much better place. So that
Yeah.
space of the pandemic, I think, offered a lot of us an opportunity to really re-examine our place in the world.
Yeah. And you can fight your way through it all you want, but you couldn't go outside. So you were fighting with yourself, so yeah.
So, as you're saying, you're creating a new version of yourself. So, let's reframe the silence just a little bit for a minute. How can listeners know if they're in a manifestation silence versus just procrastination or burnout?
That's a really good question because it can be all of those 3 options. Here's 3 things to ask yourself that I have found helpful in my life. Am I forcing or am I flowing? That's number 1.
Okay,
Number 2, do I feel disconnected or just still? And
interesting.
number 3, is my rest guilt-ridden or is it sacred? And I'll give you an example on number 3. In
Okay,
the morning, and this podcast, I don't want to start it before my 8 a.m. because for me, from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. is sacred.
right.
It's resting time. It's downtime. It's time for me to let the ideas drop in. right? So if it's guilt ridden and it's anxious, if I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm taking this time, I've got to get to Sharon, that is avoidance.
Okay.
And if it feels peaceful and expansive and easy to protect and neutral, that's sacred. And you might have to do it a little bit to get it to feel sacred. It might not feel so natural right out of the gate.
Well, that's actually a really good self check, because if I think about the frustration I've been feeling, not jumping right back into all the cerebral things I want to do now that my physical well being is being looked after, if I actually really looked at it, how am I feeling about it? I'm feeling a little frustrated because I'm not doing things, but by the very same token, kind of okay with it. Maybe that's the problem, is I don't want to admit that I'm okay with not doing anything because that's not been in my programming.
Or what I had to do is maybe it's like, what if this is okay? Like, what if this thing, like you just said, sometimes I can sit and look at the ocean for 2 hours. What if that's the best time you could ever spend? And wouldn't it be awesome to think that you would be more productive, more abundant, more prosperous if you did spend that time than in the hustle? Like,
Okay,
wouldn't you love to think that?
that's blowing my mind right now, because the idea that it's okay for me to sit and look out my window and see the water while sipping my coffee and listening to a little bit of music for a couple of hours, and that is quote unquote productive time, just not the way that I've been defining productive time. That's mind blowing.
It is. And it is. It's a total shift. And I promise you, I know it's going to be difficult for you and our listeners. And as I said, I'm a reformed, recovering type A. The silence is more productive than anything you could push. And if you can get used to relaxing, clearing your thoughts, letting go of that hustle mentality, and you'll know it when it comes. Like, it'll feel like relief, not effort.
Right.
If you can get comfortable with that, the world is your oyster.
Wow, this is crazy. It's like the idea is pulling you toward it instead of you chasing it all the time.
Exactly.
Okay, so what you're saying is silence isn't wasted time. It's the prelude to something more exciting to come.
Yeah. And if you think about it just as simply like a breath, you have to inhale to be able to exhale, right? The pause before the breakthrough, one does not come without the other.
Great point.
So if you're listening right now, let's close this off, shall we?
That sounds
If
great.
you're listening right now, listeners, and you're in the silence, you're in the waiting, and you're in the wondering, please don't mistake it for failure. Please don't mistake it for another no. Please don't mistake it for another piece of bad news. You're not being punished. You are being prepared.
And if you're wired like me, a skeptic, and you hate waiting, maybe just remember that silence doesn't mean nothing's happening. I think, Jennifer, you're totally blowing my mind with that. Sometimes it means everything is happening. It's just not visible to you yet.
Exactly. You're being recoded for what you asked for. You asked for this. Don't forget that, folks. So don't rush the soil. Don't get your hands in there all the time. You're blowing it.
Just to be a nerd again, just wait for the defrag to happen.
I don't even know what that means. Yes, totally.
Okay, I might still check my email, but I'm going to be doing it from the beach.
Got it. Okay, folks, if you love this episode, please share it with someone who's in their own waiting season, regardless of what they're waiting for. And tag us at Manifest This Podcast. And remember, the silence isn't the absence of magic. It's where the magic gathers its strength.
Thanks, Jennifer. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for tuning in to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend, believer or skeptic. And don't forget to leave us a review so others can join in the debate. Plus, check out Jennifer's TikTok account, Manifestation RX, where she writes daily prescriptions for manifesting your dreams. Think practical tips with a dash of magic. We love hearing your questions and stories, so tell us what you're manifesting or questioning this week. Until next time, keep an open mind and maybe manifest a little magic.